You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Ave Radio.
Struggling to pay your mortgage? If you lost a family member to COVID-19, you may be eligible for homeowner assistance funds from the government. Call 1-877-894-4663 now, or visit washingtonhaf.org. That's washingtonhaf.org. Because losing a loved one does not have to mean losing your home.
Turn up your radio wherever you at. We about to bring it.
Street Beat with Tony B.
Tony B will give you a chance to tackle local, national, and international issues that affect your community.
Street Beat. Street Beat. Tony.
What's on your heart? Are you exhausted at the lack of progress for people of color in business, politics, and life? This is Cindy Bright, the host of Heartbeat Radio. Each week, we explore this heart condition of the country that is affecting you and me. We have real conversations about what's necessary for change. It's time to change this dialogue. Will you join this Heartbeat Weekly, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio?
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio,
your community radio station.
Good afternoon. This is Juan Cotto on your community radio station, our community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And welcome to WIAA Primetime. Today we have a very, very special guest. We are without my sidekick and partner, Mick Hoffman, the executive director. We have the existent executive director, and anyone who understands modern American leadership, these are actually the people that get the work done. So we are so excited to hear from BJ Kuntz, who is the assistant executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, today on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Before we go into the conversation, I will highlight that on October 27th, we're going to have another debate for all of you that are following politics, and you should be. Very, very important elections coming up. Every election is important, and we're going to have the 37th district candidates in a debate right here at Rainier Avenue Radio. We have Chapalo Street and Amijah Smith, who are two young, dynamic candidates looking to go down to Olympia and represent the 37th district and the issues here on Rainier Avenue and in Southeast Seattle. Both of them have very, very impressive backgrounds in community organizing and being involved in a variety of different aspects, and they both want to represent you down in Olympia. So tune in. That is going to be on October 27th. That is going to be at 6 o'clock, about 90 minutes of conversation. So you can be an informed voter, which is something we hope that you will participate in coming up in that first week of November. So BJ, welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. Welcome to our little humble place here at the the Columbia Street Theater, and thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. This is a beautiful little space.
Tell us a little bit about you. You are from Wenatchee, Washington. Give us the Reader's Digest version of who BJ Kuntz is.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to do it. So I am, born and raised in Wenatchee, Washington. I am the youngest of 9, believe it or not. So I have 6 older brothers and 2 older sisters, and I am the youngest of the crew, and born and raised being in a family of a lot of athletes, which many of us probably come from that space when you love athletics. And I was fortunate enough upon graduating from high school to have the opportunity to be a collegiate athlete, and I did that at Gonzaga University. I had the opportunity to play volleyball there, and I had just a really excellent experience at Gonzaga. It's a great school and a great group of people there. And upon graduating from Gonzaga, I went to Puyallup, where I was a teacher and a coach for 5 years prior to getting kind of sucked back into Wenatchee. So I went back there, taught, was an athletic director, coached volleyball, coached fast pitch, did all those kind of things for the last 20 plus years, where I have also served as a WIAA district director. So WIAA has 9 WIAA districts, and I was one of the directors during my time in Wenatchee. And about 4 years ago, when Mick took over the executive director position, they also had some assistant executive director positions, and I threw my name in the hat, and Mick gave me an opportunity to move my family from Wenatchee over here to the Renton area and establish ourselves and to do this work. So
share a little bit about your athletic experience and how you think that certainly, it sounds like it has shaped your pathway to where you are now.
Right.
But looking back on it, just really briefly, share with us that collegiate experience, maybe even a little bit with your high school experience,
right,
and how that really shaped who you are and how you became in your commitment to youth and athletics.
Right. It was something I actually thought quite a bit about today when I was in a different conversation today, and we were talking a bit about your life as a youth and how that has impacted your career. And for me, as a high school athlete, I learned a lot about discipline and commitment and being a good teammate and learning to, sort of kind of accept what my role was and being able to control what I could control in those experiences. And I had a very successful high school career, but I also had plenty of challenges and things to navigate along the way, all of which prepared me for that college experience, which then when I was in college, I unfortunately lost my mom unexpectedly and was able to utilize some of those skills that I had learned along the way to help me have sort of the discipline and the courage and the grit and the determination to continue to work through and take that to my collegiate career as an athlete and as a leader. And one of the things I'll never forget that moment when I went to play my first volleyball game after my mom had passed and thinking that, I don't know if I want to play anymore. That's just, there's bigger things going on in this world than playing volleyball. And I remember pausing and saying, but you think you want to be a coach someday. You think you want to be a teacher someday. And you don't want those to ever have to tell those kids that you quit on one of your dreams or one of your goals. And had I not had all of those experiences as a high school athlete, I don't know if I would have had the grit and determination at that moment to really stick through things like that. So I am very fortunate to have the opportunities that I had, not only as an athlete, but as a scholarship athlete at Gonzaga. And I have felt very fortunate in this new role with the WIAA to be able to see and experience athletics, participation. One of my responsibilities is eligibility and to know and understand the struggles that some of these families face and to be able to work through it. And I just feel like I'm in a perfect place at the right time under Mick's leadership and the growth that the association has handled. It's just been a really amazing thing for me, and appreciate the opportunity.
We are here on your community radio station, our community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I am Juan Cotto. I am the AWOL voice of community radio sports. This weekend, I was supposed to call the Rainier Beach Garfield game, but BJ, I went and watched the Mariners with my son. I stayed in that stadium 18 long innings, and I have no regrets. It was an unbelievable existential experience. Unfortunately, the wrong team came out on top, but certainly it was a beautiful day for baseball and a very, very almost historical, memorable event. This is BJ Kuntz. She is the assistant executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. I'm not sure what Mick has told you. Usually I come up with a little structured little thing that we talk about, but I want to kind of dig more into you, shine the spotlight on you for a second. BJ, because we hear about all these great coaches, right? We hear about Nick Saban and Don James here at the University of Washington and John Wooden and the incredible impact they've had on their student athletes. Sometimes the only female coach that comes to my mind is the great late Pat Summitt, and the former women's basketball coach at the University of Tennessee. But there have been so many female coaches who have impacted, and I guess even more recently, a lot of attention has been paid to Becky Hammond, who has been working with Greg Popovich and has really become one of the sharp, bright young minds in professional basketball. And she led the Las Vegas Aces to the WNBA championship. Many people believe that one day Becky Hammond will be a coach of the National Basketball Association. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, who are some of the female coaches that influenced you and provided that mentoring relationship, or even from a distance, like a Pat Summitt, just someone who was a role model that you could identify with?
Yeah. You know, I didn't have very many female coaches as a young child, but I will never forget one of the most influential ones I had was my high school volleyball coach. Her name is Tracy, and she was a teacher and a coach, and she was so influential in a couple of ways that I would share. One of them is, I think for women back in that time, to be successful, you had to be very strong. You couldn't show signs of weakness, and you had to instill significant amounts of kind of discipline within your team. And so not only did she do that potentially as her own way of survival in a world that's sort of a male-dominated athletic experience back then, but she also had this soft side. She would probably never admit it even to today, but she instilled confidence in us. She had ways to build us up while she would still break us down a bit. So she instilled these layers and layers of confidence that I feel like that was my most empowering experience I ever had, was her firm but yet confident building ways. When I started coaching and got into that piece of the world, for me, it was the Pat Summitts of the world that I looked to as, how do you coach? How do you survive on this stage? How do you be strong yet support and love and care about these kids? So you're right. There are some pretty amazing examples out there, and more continue to shed light on the opportunities for women to coach and the skill set that so many have. Doesn't matter who they're coaching, men or women. It doesn't matter what the venue is, but they have something to bring to the table to enhance the experience.
Tell us a little about your philosophy. Pete Carroll talks about his philosophy after he got fired from the, I believe it was New England Patriots. He sat out a year and really he figured credo around competition and win forever came from. And from your perspective, we think about football and basketball and these hard-driven coaches and structure and discipline, but volleyball, cross country, we're going to talk a little bit about slow pitch softball. Tell us a little bit about it's more to community structure in those sports as well. There's discipline, structure, rigor. There's teamwork, and tell us a little bit about how you to develop maybe a philosophy that's instilled in the kids that you're coaching.
Yeah, right. So one of the things that I would say is really foundational for me is around just sort of the discipline that you lead your life with. It is the discipline to say, instead of listening to the messages I'm giving myself, I'm going to flip that around and have the discipline to say, I can do this. I have the confidence that I can do this. So I'm just sort of a big believer in the discipline you instill in your life, whether it's hitting snooze on your alarm or jumping out of bed to say, I got this today, I got this today. So I'm a big believer in that discipline piece, because I think you can build on that over time. And sometimes just teaching yourself that I can do these little things builds enough confidence to do the bigger thing. So when it comes to working with kids, I'm a really big believer in that. The second thing that I would say from a coach's perspective is every day when you walk into that space to coach these kids, you don't know what their day was like. You don't know what they bring to the table. And so the importance of that relationship with each and every one of those kids cannot be, undervalued. You just don't know. And you may be the most important adult in that student's life, and you don't even know it. And so I think as a coach, sometimes it's easy to get our ego in front, or to lead with our ego, or to be worried about the wins and the losses, and kind of miss out on remembering those relationships. And I think today, more than maybe ever in my professional career, do I believe that relationship for those kids is the most important thing. And so I think teaching kids the discipline and helping them teach themselves that they can do it, partnered with a positive, supporting role model, can take kids in all kinds of directions. Because if you're leading in that way, those relationships, the success begins to take care of itself.
It's so interesting you say that. When I was the head football coach at Highline High School, and in that role, I certainly felt like the kids could pick up on all of your
Yeah.
little idiosyncrasies. I mean, and it really in some ways really forces you not to lead a perfect life, but you're really conscious of the things that you do, because as you're speaking them into these young kids, they're looking at you.
Yeah.
And they can pick up what is real and what is not. And I've always felt that was something that was just a really interesting thing about coaching and leading and educating kids. They can pick up, and they can sense that out of a coach.
Yeah. And I think kids, they want to know sort of why you're doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And they can find that in you very easily. If you don't know your why, and you don't know, even when you build a drill, and like, why are you doing the drill? So you are moving the kids in the direction you want to lead them. And so you're exactly right. They can see it in you, and they can see, if you're struggling, they can see if you're not being true to your beliefs, or true to what you're asking them to do. So I think it's really important that, and I think today's student athlete wants to know the why, maybe even more than my generation did. My generation, we were more willing. You tell me to jump, I say how high, and that was the end of that. And I actually appreciate that in our youth today, that they want to know that.
You went to Gonzaga University.
Yes.
And obviously the audience knows that I am also a Catholic school grad. I did 12 years in the Seattle Catholic schools. I was St. Edward's in Columbia City, in the heart of Rainier Avenue, out to St. Paul's out in the South End, and then O'Day High School. There is and certainly, my mother was a Garfield High School grad. She grew up Catholic, wanted her first son to go to O'Day. And we have a wonderful relationship and so much respect for Garfield High School in our house. But the Catholic schools, there is and Gonzaga in particular, with Seattle University, the Jesuit influence. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, as a student in that environment, the Jesuit influence and the development of self, the intellectual conversation about the growth and development of the individual tied into a sense of community and service. Tell us about how that experience influenced coaching.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I was born and raised in public schools all my life. My mom also a Garfield graduate.
Is that right?
Yeah, so my mom was born and raised in Seattle, and was a Garfield graduate back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I was, I think, maybe the only one in my family, when I think back on it, that went into a private collegiate experience. And I was immediately just attracted to the service. I was, asked to do community service as part of my experience at Gonzaga. One of my greatest relationships while I was there was an individual that I did some one-on-one service with. That was a And that was just those experiences and what Gonzaga asked of you as a human being settled in me more sense of service than I even had before. And I also felt that reciprocated to me when my mom passed away. When I showed up back at school again, the way I was embraced by my professors, by my teachers, you don't get that in other kinds of education. So I was blessed in many, many ways of that experience. And I found that when I began leading as a coach, I started instilling that sense of service within my own teams and the things that we did. So
she is BJ Kuntz. She is from Wenatchee, Washington. She is the Assistant Executive Director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. She is a Gonzaga Bulldog, the perennial NC2A Division I powerhouse led by Mark Few and too many all-star players to recognize. I am Juan Cotto, and as you probably know, and we've received emails about, I am an O'Day High School grad. My mom went to Garfield. But I am a personality here who calls some sports, maybe sometimes too many sports, on Rainier Avenue Radio .world. And we are here with WIAA Primetime, our weekly look at issues impacting sports in our community at the high school level. Usually we have Mick Hoffman, who is the executive director of the organization, but today BJ Kuntz is very, very capably stepping in. Just for the audience to know, we will be having a major debate, and tonight, as you know, during our broadcast, we have really emphasized the importance of voting in our community, and we want people to really take a good look at the issues. And we believe that as an organization, we have an opportunity to present the candidates and the issues that you're going to be looking at on this November's ballot. On October the 27th, we're having a debate right here at the historic Columbia City Theater. The two candidates who are running for the 37th district position, Maija Smith is going to be taking on Chapalo Street. And in politics, it really isn't two people battling each other. These are two different opportunities for you to take a look at people who are running in the community. They've taken their time to do this. And thank both candidates for doing it. If you see them, when they come knock on your door, thank you both, Maija and Chapalo, for making the decision to run for office. They are looking to be our voice in Olympia. There are some major issues coming up in Olympia stemming from the pandemic, and they are going to debate those issues on Rainier Avenue Radio .world on October the 27th at 6 o'clock. So please take some time, familiarize yourself with the candidates, and please take the time to vote. You talked about, you and I, before that we came on the show, we were talking about different sports that are coming up, and you have a big tournament coming up this weekend. One that I'm really excited about as a former baseball player, and I love this particular sport. The WIAA has made a commitment to slow pitch softball.
Yeah.
And I was joking, it's kind of akin, slow pitch softball with the technical aspect of fast pitch softball, which can be a very difficult sport. And my son's in select baseball programs, and we see the commitment of young women who are playing slow pitch. Some young women may get left behind. What a great opportunity for them to participate in the sport. And I was comparing it kind of like the pickleball as opposed to tennis. Slow pitch softball gives you an opportunity to play and be competitive, and gives you all of the competitive aspects of fast pitch with an opportunity to compete at a level that's appropriate for the participant. And tell us a little bit about the opportunity to play slow pitch softball, and tell us a little bit about the tournament coming up.
Yeah, you bet. So slow pitch, back when I was in high school, a while back, slow pitch was the sport. And then it transitioned to fast pitch, and slow pitch went away. And maybe about 10 years or so ago, slow pitch started getting some momentum in our high schools around the state of Washington. And they were playing that as a fall sport to increase participation opportunities for girls within their schools. So it was initially brought back as maybe a bit of a Title IX opportunity to level the playing field and give girls another opportunity. Well, what's happened is it's taken off. And so as Eastern Washington kind of got it going first, and then it slowly has expanded. In fact, the Metro League is one of our most recent leagues that has had an insurgence of bringing slow pitch up. So some of the schools are still working to get enough kids interested, but they're offering it and they're finding ways. Schools are combining their programs to make sure that they can provide this opportunity. So it has added kids that don't even do other sports are choosing to play slow pitch. We have kids that are fast pitch players that are doing this in the fall. So you're getting kind of a mixed bag in that. But it is super, super great. 4 years ago was the first year the WIAA had slow pitch as a state championship again. So we had it 4 years ago, and then 3 years ago we had it, and then the pandemic hit. And then so we didn't have it 2 years ago, and then now we're back at it. So it is really fun. So we'll be in Yakima, not this weekend, but next weekend. So October 28th and 29th, we run the state tournament in Yakima. Our 4A classification, which is our biggest schools, they have enough schools participating to have an 8-team tournament. Wow. And then the 2As and 3As combine, and they will also have an 8-team tournament. So we'll have 16 schools in Yakima over 2 days, battling out for a couple of state championships.
And it's really interesting. I mean, two things come to mind immediately for me. Number one, it's fun.
Yes.
And number two, unlike not unlike fast pitch softball and baseball with the select team, you don't need to spend $5,000 to be a part of the highly competitive training. This kind of is akin to the way sports almost used to be, right?
Yeah.
People can go out and they learn, have fun, hit the ball, but they kind of get intense about it without having to have a professional coach or trainer or a mentor to teach you how to hit the softball. Everyone goes out there and plows into that thing. I'm sure has a good time.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, because one of the things that I have appreciated the most about being involved in this sport is the group of kids it brings together. When you go to that state tournament, they, quite a few of them, have parents and have family supporters, but more than that, they are pulling together as a group of kids. It's fun. They're laughing. They're having a great time. And last year I rode in the elevator with a group of girls from Cleveland High School, and we were all in the elevator together. And this young girl looked at me and she said, "Are you working this tournament?" Because I had my shirt on, and I said, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I have never been out of town. This is my first time in a hotel. This is my first time overnight with classmates and teammates." And they were absolutely having the time of your life. And it was so cool. And that's the piece that I absolutely love about this sport and what it's providing for kids that maybe wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to play competitive fast pitch because of this expectation of playing club sports. So absolutely one of my favorite sports I run.
And it sounds also like there's probably no hard path to becoming a coach of this. It sounds like you probably got coaches and volunteers for the tournament as well, and in terms of trying to develop that whole aspect of
and some of the schools have their fast pitch coaches also coaching their slow pitch team. And you're exactly right. It didn't cost schools much to bring this on, because many of them, they're using the fast pitch bats, they're using the fast pitch balls, they can use their fast pitch uniforms. So it is a pretty low risk sport for schools to add. And it's really, like I said, it's been really fun to watch people continue to add this.
As we are getting ready to come up on a break, we have about roughly 2 minutes. Tell us a little bit about just the aspect of putting a tournament together, especially for a sport that's just a little bit obscure, like slow pitch softball. The number of volunteers needed, and it sounds like you have your location planned out. How does the community kind of come out and support this event?
Yeah, it's a great point. So, all of our state tournaments, communities have the opportunity to sort of bid to host them. Yakima has kind of won that opportunity at this point to host it, but we will continue to expand if others locations want to do that. And our team, and there's a team in Yakima that pulls together, and they will have, announcers at each field and scorekeepers at each field. And then of course the ticket folks. So there's a really nice team of about 20 people over in Yakima that will be welcoming us when we get there. Within our office, we're a very small team of just 12 staff members, and all 12 staff members have a part to play, from staff members that do all the social media things to the staff members who make sure we have pass gates, to those that make sure we have officials. We all have a role to play. And so it's a really neat opportunity when you work at the WIAA office to see all 12 people pulling together to make one event happen. And that happens for each of our state tournaments, but we all have a part to play. And it's really, and the team in Yakima is fantastic. So we come together for this fantastic weekend.
She is BJ Kuntz. She is the Assistant Executive Director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. She is sitting in on behalf of Mick Hoffman, who is out this week. He is in his incredible schedule somewhere across the state, checking in on high schools and students and doing what he does best, being the ambassador for the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. We're going to take a quick break, and we will return to have more conversation about sports in high schools on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.org.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not explaining to my intern exactly what R&B is, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Struggling to pay your mortgage? If you or a family member couldn't work or are struggling with medical bills after COVID, you may be eligible for homeowner assistance funds from the government. Call 1-877-894-4663 now or visit WashingtonHAF.org. That's WashingtonHAF.org. Because getting sick does not have to mean losing your home.
What's up, everyone? It's your girl, Queen Bree, inviting you to come join me on Clean Greens Living. Broadcasted Tuesdays, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. On Clean Greens Living, we talk farming, community, and ways to being healthy. So come join me and let's discuss ways to create a healthier you and a healthier community.
This is your Rainier Avenue Radio.world community update on free online exercise classes. The YMCA of Pierce and Kitsap counties has launched more than 60 free online exercise classes and youth programs to support the health and well-being of the community. Classes include boot camp, yoga, weightlifting, boxing, tai chi, and more. Find classes at ymca360.org. No membership is needed to access these classes at ymca360.org.
1, 2, get down. What's up, big and little homies? This is Masvita Maraire, host of Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, your one-stop shop for Seattle sports. We cover preps, we cover college, we cover pro, we cover it all. Huskies, Mariners, Seahawks, Garfield, South, Roosevelt, Petro, King County. This is what you want to listen to for all the sports that's happening in Seattle. Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
See a bad.
Are you a small business owner in Seattle who was impacted by COVID-19? The Seattle Office of Economic Development is investing $8 million to connect small businesses to operating capital. The Small Business Capital Access Program will lower the cost of Washington State Small Business Flex Fund loans by paying down 25% of the loan principal. Eligible small businesses can borrow up to $150,000 with a 4% interest rate to cover expenses like payroll, rent, utilities, and supplies.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Welcome back to WIAA Primetime Weekly, our weekly conversation, usually with Mick Hoffman, but Mick is out in the community right now, so we have the very, very talented and capable BJ Kuntz, who is the Assistant Executive Director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association in their 12-person office down in Renton, Washington, and she's sharing some stories about the teamwork, and we'll touch on some of those in a second. First of all, congratulations to the Rainier Beach Vikings and Coach Corey Sampson and his crew who defeated the Garfield Bulldogs last weekend, 25-15 down at Memorial Stadium. And BJ, one of the beautiful things about that football game last week, the mayor, Bruce Carroll, the city of Seattle, he worked the chain gang for that game. And he's a proud Garfield grad, and he actually last week had both teams into the mayor's office as a former football player. And the mayor of our city was a former outstanding football player. The story has it that Bruce Carell had 2 scholarships to choose from that he finally got to his. He could go to the University of Washington and play linebacker, or he could go to Harvard and play linebacker. And the University of Washington went on and Don James' initial Rose Bowl team back in 1978, and a memorable victory for some of us over the University of Michigan. I can't believe it was that long ago. But the mayor himself was down there, and the ability for him to connect with kids who are playing that particular sport, one that really he was able to galvanize the early part of his educational career around, and ended up going to law school, and now after a successful career in law and a short time on the city council, the mayor still remains connected to the community. I thought it was a beautiful story last weekend, as some of us were watching 18 innings of baseball. Speaking about community representatives, on the 27th of October, right here at the Columbia City Theater, we are going to have a debate between the 2 candidates running for the 37th district representative position. Chapalo Street is running against Elijah Smith and Chapalo Street, 2 candidates who have fantastic community backgrounds. They are energetic, they are dynamic leaders, and they are well versed on the issues. And this is going to give you an opportunity to hear about some of the many issues that are going to go on. And one of these 2 people will be our voice in Olympia. So we encourage you to take a listen to the debate, to hear about the issues, to see the different styles and personalities. And hopefully this will allow you to go ahead and participate, and we hope you participate the first week in November when those ballots come to your mailbox. Please vote. It is important. And if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. So October the 27th, that's going to be 6 o'clock here, but you can certainly find that on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And then this Friday evening, the Garfield Bulldogs will be taking on the O'Day Fighting Irish. So my mother and I will have a battle over that one. That's going to be at 5 p.m. October 21st. The Irish are ranked 6th. The Irish are ranked 6th in the state. Their record is 6-1. The Garfield Bulldogs, once again, they took a tough loss to the Rainier Beach Vikings on Saturday, but still an outstanding football team, as you know, and certainly will be a very, very hotly contested contest. And that is going to be coming from Memorial Stadium. If you can't make it to the ball game, go ahead and turn on the radio, and we certainly will be having that broadcast here at 5 o'clock. And once again, that should be an outstanding football game. BJ, let's talk a little bit about eligibility, which is one of the roles that you do. And as a former coach, the eligibility of kids who transfer, sometimes the eligibility that's due to the academic issues. And we know at times this can be a very, very emotional subject. What are the key fundamentals of making sure that we can get kids to participate in the sport, whether it is through the districts and where they live, and the potential of a kid who moves into the district. And we've heard those stories over the years. And then also from an academic perspective, and maybe, I'm not sure if you deal with that so much. I know that's a district issue, but let's just talk about the fundamentals of what it is to make sure that a person who wants to participate in their sport can participate in that sport.
Right. So the eligibility basics, every time a student wants to participate in a sport, an athletic director is going to do about a six category check on each kid. You know, some very basics, which everybody would know and understand. You have to have that sports physical. You have to be, within the age range. You have a certain number of years to have athletic eligibility, 4 years of high school. So some of those boxes are the pretty easy ones to check. As you move down, there are students have to be a member of the school in which they participate. And while that seems simple on the outside, during the pandemic, one of the things that we found was a lot of students and families choosing to access their education via an online school, an alternative school, maybe shifting to homeschool. The pathway to gain your education became very creative and became things that families could really pick and choose what was going to work best for their kid. So that created some challenges for families when they maybe have always done sports and activities at this school, but they no longer attend it, and now they go to an alternative or an online, but they still want to come back and participate. So that has created some challenges for families because we have rules around, we all have a home district where your home is located, and that becomes your school where you get to access athletics. Sometimes people have been going to a school that was a choice school, not their home school. So that created some challenges on families being able to choose the best education, which maybe didn't line up with where their access to athletics became. So that's one of the things that we found has become challenging for families. Of course, you have a residence rule. You also have both academic and transfer. And those are two of the ones that we probably hear the most about. One of them academically, every time a student does want to participate, an athletic director has to go back to their previous semester, make sure they took and completed enough credits. But at the same time, they also have to look at their current semester that they're currently taking and successfully, making progress in enough classes as well. And so not only is that important to going towards graduation, but it's just an important part of the athletic experience that you can balance both athletics and academic expectations and maintain a certain standard, of course. So the WIAA has, we have a minimum standard of how many classes you need to be taking and passing, but there are schools a little more restrictive that want you to be passing all and what have you. And then of course there's the transfer rules. And our transfer rules are intended to not only provide that avenue if a family does move or have one of those situations, but also to protect the kids at that school. So many times you'll have, let's just say a school, with 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, and you have 9th graders who've been waiting for their opportunity to be a 10th grader to get that chance to be on the starting squad, or a 10th grader waiting for their chance to be on the starting squad as an 11th grader, and then somebody transfers in and takes that spot. So our transfer rules are intended to, provide the opportunity for families that need to transfer their student for one reason or another, but still also try to protect the students that are in the school and that have maintained in that school as well to not lose their opportunity.
The academic piece is always very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it also can be very emotional at times. Sometimes you have a district that has a lower standard,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have a district which may have a slightly higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
And as a coach, I used to wrestle with this because, and I'm sure you probably have, and you probably hear stories from coaches all the time. We have kids who may be struggling academically.
Mm-hmm.
They have a tough time in one particular class. The grades come out and they unfortunately have to sit out. At the same time, this is the environment where they're functioning the best.
Mm-hmm.
This is the environment where they are attentive to their coaches, they're accountable to their teammates. And I just as an administrator and as a coach, and you as a coach as well, we've dealt with parents
Mm-hmm.
who sometimes are completely upset when they find out that their child has been pulled from the team to get their grades in order. And I am wondering, what is the right answer?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there a right answer? I mean, and obviously, in our house, the answer was, if you're not going to do your schoolwork, you're not going to play.
Right.
It was real clear where my mother stood on that. And we really, by hook or by crook, however we did it, we put the extra emphasis on there. We know sometimes the families don't have the same emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are being raised by guardians. Some of them are being raised on their own.
Right.
How do we? What is your sense of the philosophy around the academic aspect of this?
Right. No matter what the standard is at any particular school, my belief is that as school personnel, we come up alongside the student and that there aren't surprises, right? So it should be a consistent review of academics and check-ins and progress, because I believe the consistency is where you end up supporting the student the most. I'm a big believer in, once in a while having one F is not the end of the world, because that doesn't always tell the whole picture. It may be just one assignment that you didn't do very well. Once in a while, there's a teacher that didn't input the grade. And so it's sitting the way that it is. So as when I was an administrator, I felt like it was okay to have one. It was not okay to have two. It was okay to have one as long as the whole picture showed that you're doing okay. If you have one F and 5 Ds, that's not necessarily a good situation. So when I was an athletic director, that's how we approached it in our school. It was okay to have one as long as you didn't have two. But I'm also feel very strongly that the academic piece, it needs to be emphasized. It shouldn't be just a reactive, oh, look, you got an F, boom, you're off the team today. You shouldn't be surprised about it. You should know the consequences. And there should be a very consistent, pattern of communication that is wrapping around this environment.
As an educator, which I guess we both, and certainly I felt like I had an educational responsibility, because I didn't want to sit back 20 years from now thinking I spent this much time with these young people and they weren't performing in their community very well. So we had a high standard to it. But it was really interesting. A faculty member, a teacher, approached me one time and they said, geez, how come he gets to be so lucky that he has a coach that will follow up with him? And I thought it was kind of an odd comment. And I'm like, the situation goes hand in hand. He chose to participate in the sport. I feel a responsibility to make sure that he is going to follow through with his education. So I work with them on that. But I was wondering, in your experience, have you felt that there are some teachers who were kind of like, geez, these people put so much time and energy into this particular group of kids. Why don't they do that with all of them?
Right. I think, there's a little bit of everything, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what makes part of what makes the school system powerful is, as a student, you have 5 or 6 different teachers that you're interacting with, which is a very good opportunity to practice understanding the needs of different people and making sure you can meet those needs. No different than they maybe play football, basketball, baseball, and they're going to have 3 different coaches. And that's probably why I always had a little bit of room for some grace, knowing that sometimes one relationship might be more difficult than the other. But any way you look at it, it is your responsibility as a student athlete to sort of learn how to navigate each of these as an independent person, because this is what the world is like. You're going to go into a workforce someday and you're going to have coworkers that sort of handle things and manage things differently. So, while you have different personalities in your school building, that's a good practice, because at the end of the day, the majority of those teachers are going to want to help that student get to where they need to be. And so it's a good, safe place for kids to learn how to manage those relationships and to figure out how to, most teachers, you put forth effort, you meet them halfway, they're going to do the same with you. And so I think there's a lot of good life lessons in there for kids.
She is BJ Kuntz. She is the Assistant Executive Director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. She is a former volleyball player. She is a Gonzaga Bulldog. I am Juan Cotto. I am the on-air radio host, who I think you've heard a couple of times here or there on Rainier Avenue Radio, calling sports and being a part of the Rainier Avenue Radio community. I am a Bode High School grad, Western Oregon Wolves, Harvard in the Willamette Valley, and I am a former baseball player a long, long time ago. And we are here just discussing issues with our athletes that the WIAA deals with on a regular basis. And we are so fortunate to have these incredible professionals making sure that we have an equitable opportunity for all of our students throughout the state of Washington. And certainly Ms. Kuntz represents that on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. And just a couple of things we want to share with you before we continue this conversation. On October 27th, the 37th District Legislative candidates, Chapalo Street and Amijah Smith, they will be right here at the Columbia City Theater. We will have a debate on the issues that are important here in the Southeast Seattle area, the 37th District. the most diverse district in the state of Washington, also with the most diverse issues. And they want to be our voice in Olympia. And very, very fortunate in our community that we have two outstanding candidates who are taking their time this summer to run for this position. And BJ, I had harbored a political career one time. The state legislature is a very, very difficult, demanding job. So thank you to both candidates for choosing to do this. And one person will be successful in November, and we encourage you to come and learn more about these two candidates and listen to this debate so you can learn more about the issues going on in the community and the people who want to represent you. And we encourage you to vote that first week of November when the ballots come out. Friday night, 5 o'clock here on Rainier Avenue Radio, what I believe, do best. The Metro League 3A high school football, the O'Day Fighting Irish and their robust 6-1 record take on the Garfield Bulldogs and their 5-2 record. And it's going to be an exciting contest. You saw O'Day earlier this year on Rainier Avenue Radio take on the Rainier Beach Vikings down at the game at Lumen Field. Garfield just played Rainier Beach the other night at Memorial. Busy that night. Some professional athletes held me captive at Safeco Field or T-Mobile Park for 18 innings. But anyways, I don't need to belabor the point. This is an outstanding football contest, and we are hoping that you will be able to tune in. BJ, the other side of eligibility, and I have friends who live in Texas, and it's amazing how football coaches change to a school, and all of a sudden kids from all over different communities start filing in to play for this particular coach.
Yeah.
And that is a big time problem that gets discussed. I'm sure you hear about it in terms of the eligibility of drawing boundaries where people are supposed to live and attend schools. In Washington State, we have had some issues over the years, quite public at times, over the eligibility of athletes in terms of where they are supposed to go to school. Obviously, I have a friend from New York City, and it just still boggles his mind that the private schools in our community participate with the public schools, which he believes is horribly unfair advantage. And I know a number of people who over the years also have similar feelings about that. Not just from your in regards to the eligibility and people crossing in over a boundary or trying to go to a school that has a better academic program, and citizens of the community feeling that they wanted the IP program, but it was the reason why they're going to school is for sports. And we know this can be a little bit of a debate. How does the WIAA try to wrestle with that?
It's not easy. Let's say that. And one of the things that you want to do is give family choice on where they educate their child. For me, growing up in Eastern Washington, there weren't nearly as many options in terms of private school, public school, what have you. But taking this job and being here, I've been much more exposed to the different options and opportunities that are available to kids. And then you had the pandemic on top of that, right? So one of the things that our membership has put into place 3 years ago or so was a thing called the window of transfer. So this is a fairly new rule in our association. And the philosophy behind it is that natural break between 8th and 9th grade. The philosophy is you go to whatever school you want, as long as they will take you. And so we've provided this window of transfer so you can go wherever you want to establish yourself as a high school student. Once you've done that, that is your high school of choice for the remainder of your high school years. And we've made our transfer rules, our association made our transfer rules a little bit more challenging of once you've made that choice, if you decide to transfer from that. So we're trying to provide opportunity. We're trying to provide opportunity in a space that's fair and equitable to everybody. You do that between 8th and 9th grade. And then once you've made that decision, that is your high school of choice. And I think that has maybe helped things a little bit because families get to make that choice. So hopefully they're doing their homework, They're doing their research. They're doing some visits at different schools, asking some questions. So they're making a good choice going into 9th grade.
The private school versus public school debate,
Mm-hmm.
one that is extremely difficult for me, and one that's extremely personal.
Right.
If you would have seen me come out of St. Paul School at all 5'4", 118 pounds of me, I know it's hard to believe now, but it certainly, O'Day's interest in me certainly wasn't for athletics either, but nevertheless, everything makes sense over time, right?
Right.
But the bottom line issue is that the whole notion of families picking a place where they believe, especially nowadays, that their child will get the academic support and the athletic support to receive this mythical college scholarship.
Right.
And you and I also both know, no matter how talented you are, receiving a college scholarship are really to a handful of very, very select athletes.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have that as in the forefront of their mind. So the versus is there an easy, actually here in the state of Washington, with both of those entities competing against each other, is there an easy way to rationalize this debate and also come up with a solid policy? Just the WIAA.
Right. My experience in the 4 years of doing this work, I have found that I trust our process, to be honest with you. Families have choices of where they choose to enroll their child. If for some reason that does not work and they choose to transfer, the way our rules are written is it is fairly clear that if that decision to transfer from school A to school B is not a result of a natural family unit move, your whole family moves from Spokane to Tacoma or Tacoma to Bellingham, or, if it's not one of those, that you end up having to participate in a hearing and you would have to prove hardship, which would be a situation beyond your control. That's one of the hardest things for families to grapple with, because they will say, well, this move was not for athletic purposes. This is not athletically motivated. It's academically motivated, but that still doesn't quite meet the definition of a hardship. And it can be very, very challenging for families and schools when kids are transferring. And at the end of the day, quite often families will make a choice that does not necessarily mean they're going to get their varsity athletic eligibility. So we have many cases where families make that transition, make the transfer, and unfortunately their student ends up having to play JV for 1 year before gaining their varsity eligibility. Because at the end of the day, it's a family choice to make that decision rather than a circumstance really beyond their control.
Do you think in the future, and I know that there have been some books written by some coaches here in the local area that had some issues with this particular thing, and their belief is that the parent should have a say, and that this should be more of a kind of a cosmetic thing, that if I want better athletics, I should be able to go to that school and put my kid into that school. And the person who was writing this feels that that'll increase the school to put more emphasis on athletics and spend more time. Is that a fair assessment? In the future, will parents still have more control to look at, hey, I want my kid to play on a competitive team,
right,
if that's their belief. They'll play on a competitive team for scholarship purposes. Is that something that will come more into the equation, and the district or the WIAA will be more flexible, or we're really in line of making good decisions based on the types of policy we have in place right now?
It would take a lot for me to personally change sort of some of my thinking around this, mostly because I feel like there are many, many students that don't get to make that choice of where they go to school. Their family doesn't have the money to pay for it. They don't have the transportation to cover it. And I think that there is such an equity that already exists in high school athletics, just because there's families that can afford the club systems. There are families that can't afford it. There's enough inequities that exist already that I can't imagine we would be in a position where we would sort of open that up and allow people to sort of do whatever they want. So
just last thing, and Daniel, if you just give us a couple of seconds here, it's been a remarkable summer. Obviously the excitement around the Mariners and what a weekend they had, what a week they gave us last week. The excitement around the Seahawks playing well, the University of Washington, the Cougars going out to Wisconsin,
right?
And the Seattle Storm with our legendary athlete Sue Bird losing her game in dramatic fashion to Becky Hammond in an unbelievable finish, and it was talked about in the newspapers, one of the also one of the most painful losses in Seattle sports history, and it was. Just the community building aspect of sports, especially around professional sports, and all these fantastic athletes who've played in state-sponsored institutions like the WIAA. What does it say about sports as a community builder?
You know, for so many of these high school athletes, which you already know, the state tournament or that high school game that you're going to cover this weekend, this is their opportunity. This is their opportunity to shine. It's their opportunity to be on a team, which they're never going to, many of those kids will never have the opportunity to be on the Mariners or the Storm or any of those others. So I think the more that our community can get behind these student athletes, behind these schools, because they are the future of our communities. They are the future leaders. They're the future, Bruce Harrells of the world. And, we all get really excited about the Mariners and the Storm. I'm right there with you. But what those kids get to do in an educational-based environment with educational-based coaches and the officials that come out of their way to serve those schools and those programs, they deserve the community support that I think in many communities, and this is one of them, that the community does come out and support those high school student athletes.
BJ, thank you so much for taking time to come and spend a little time with us at Rainier Avenue Radio.
You bet.
Appreciate you and appreciate your candor and your incredible, thoughtful, detailed answers today.
Yeah, you bet.
Hey, we will see you Friday night at 5 o'clock at Memorial Stadium for the O'Day Irish and the Garfield Bulldogs on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Juan Cotto signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you Friday night, and we will see you next week.